Okay, number 18. How do we follow that? I don't know. Yeah, so Star Wars Force Awakens. Now we get into the ones that
Wow, you guys
are,
are lower than me? Wow.
yeah.
Whoa.
So this was the most, and I can say this, I think, without really much pushback, but this was the most anticipated Star Wars thing probably ever because of the sort of momentum that was
Yeah, I
carried
agree.
from the original six movies, the Clone Wars. It was the first big screen movie that we'd gotten since 2005.
Yeah. Yeah.
George Lucas has passed on the torch. So many different things as we get into this movie. You're bringing back, original characters, um, and just 10 years of people just pent up expectation. And so that kind of brings us right into this one, which I think was mostly well received based on the reviews. I think most fans are at least fine with this movie. I don't think there's a lot definitely more positive than negative.
Yeah.
I think the the sequels that came after definitely maybe mar the outlook on this one a little bit more. But yeah, just since I'm already talking, I'll just jump right in. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. My biggest issue with this movie is narratively it is a reboot of A
Yep.
New Hope, and that is one of my biggest issues with this movie because it's very unoriginal. It doesn't do anything new. Um, it just it's basically the most softball, the safest thing that they could have done to get people to go pay $2 billion plus to see this movie, and really it narratively just it does a good job of setting up the trilogy, but it doesn't do anything to push the franchise forward in the sense of innovation and new and cool story ideas and sort of going to these different places and doing things we haven't seen before. And so I think that's where I'm at with it. I've never been a huge J.J. Abrams fan, but the movie obviously looks great visually, but and it's got some fun moments. But I think some of the characters are probably criminally underdeveloped, and I think that's just a more of a testament to lack of direction than anything else. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I could go into a lot more things, but that's kind of the gist of where I am.
Yeah, I think my biggest pet peeve was the way they did Finn. Like, I think like leading up into the movie, I feel like you got that vibe that he was going to be basically the next Jedi of the movie. And I think that they should have ran with that because I think it would have been really cool to see a rogue stormtrooper turn Jedi. And I just thought that would have been, yeah, right? Yeah.
Just saying.
Yep. So, I mean, I thought that would have been a cool plot that they could have ran with, and they decided to go a different direction with obviously Rey being the Jedi, which I mean, like, I think it could have been good if they would have done it better, I would say, in the second and third movie. But yeah, I just think Finn just got like terrible treatment involving that, like especially in the last two movies as well. Like it was even worse. Like it was just kind of like just put on the back burner almost as a character. But yeah, I think that was my biggest pet peeve. I think they should have ran with that. Like I think that would have been a cool plot point, and I think that would have been cool to see again a rogue stormtrooper turn Jedi. I mean, I thought that would have been dope. But yeah, like kind of Johnny said, it just kind of felt like A New Hope almost. It was similar to story wise. I mean, it felt like it was basically a carbon copy of it pretty much. I think they could have done that better. It was nostalgia factor. I mean, it was great. I mean, I enjoyed that. Seeing Han Solo, Chewbacca, and all them back. Leia, like it was cool nostalgia wise. Other than that, I mean, that's really all I gotta say. Probably. I mean, Poe Dameron, right? Poe Dameron, right?
Poe Dameron.
Dameron, yeah. I think his character is great. The first one, at least. I really liked his character as a whole. Thought that was good. And the actor as well, Oscar Isaac, is
Yeah,
amazing.
Oscar Isaac's great.
He kills a lot of his roles. I mean, he's just so good. Yeah. So
I think the main thing that I liked about it was how it was shot. They did a good job with all the visuals without making it feel something different than Star Wars, if that makes sense. Obviously, there's a lot of the actors and favorite old Star Wars characters came back, and then I did like a lot of the humor in it for the most part. Obviously, it's not the best Star Wars. Only thing that can be attributed to the shortcomings, I think, is what we've all talked about, is kind of an absence of its own pronounced storyline. I mean, the plot's there, but it's blurry.
Yeah.
And that's across multiple characters as a whole in general. I think, obviously for me, nostalgia played a part. It coming back, I get to watch Star Wars, and that's the first Star Wars movie I watched in film or watched in the movie theater.
Oh, we're old.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, we're so old.
So.
You go ahead.
The Force Awakens, obviously, the sequel trilogy in general, is not my favorite. I did enjoy The Force Awakens, especially when it first came out, and I didn't think about it as much. But y'all are right when you said, they really teed it up for a great series. Honestly, I think Finn was set up to be a really good dynamic character who was force sensitive.
Yes.
There was a lot of good setup. It was a good setup movie for a trilogy. Yes, it is almost verbatim to the very first Star Wars movie. And I know that was kind of the point that they were wanting to do, because that's the movie got us to all of Star Wars to begin with. But it has its problems. Daisy Ridley's great, but her character is a little bit of a Mary Sue, and we do have so many strong female characters in Star Wars already. It's hard to see a female character that's supposed to come off as very strong, but's just kind of coming off as lackluster. And then, of course, Kylo Ren was set up as another great villain, and he kind of turns into a petulant toddler with great abs. But, I mean, I didn't hate the movie.
We didn't notice, but we didn't notice that. You did.
I noticed. But like y'all said, it was fun.
I was thinking what Ray was thinking. Can you put a cloak on, please?
Put a shawl on or something.
I was like, no, keep it off. Rest of the movie, shirtless.
That's the second movie, actually.
I know that's the second movie, but no. But again, it was really great to get to see Star Wars in theaters again, because the last, unlike y'all's being the first, the last one I saw was Revenge of the Sith. Thank you. It's been a long day with the kids.
We were kids, but we saw it.
We were kids, but we saw it. But it was really fun getting to see Star Wars again.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part of the movie was actually something that happened in the theater when we watched it. Was when Rey, she turns on the lightsaber to fight Kylo Ren, and this guy who had been drinking profusely throughout the movie, so hammered.
We were at the one at Bridge Street.
Yeah.
Where there's a bar right behind you.
Stands up in just the middle of the crowd and goes, "Kick his ass!" And honestly, that just made the movie amazing to me in general. So I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to say a curse word on your show, but
you were quoting somebody else, so
Right.
Okay. But just the feeling in the theater, I think, with everybody being so excited, was my favorite thing about the movie.
The hype was
more fun than the movie.
Was really fun. Yeah. Jonathan, you nailed it right. You said that it was probably one of the more hype movies, most hype movie ever in Star Wars ever, just because it had been, so many years since we had a movie. I have mine low. For the record, I liked the movie. Left the movie liking the movie. It's very difficult for me to rate this movie higher than The Rise of Skywalker. It's very difficult for me to rate this movie because of the trilogy itself, because of everything you guys just said. So many missed opportunities. The name itself implies that the Force is awakening in a way we haven't seen before. Just take a look at all the Star Wars titles names. You know, this one's implying there's just an awakening. Snoke mentions it in his green giant hologram. He's like, the Force is awakening, and that's about it. Well, what's the point? There's the Phantom Menace. There's the Empire Strikes Back. You know, what's happening? You know, the Force Awakens, it almost implies, hey, Star Wars is back, is really what it implies. But what they could have done, like you said, is ran with Finn, a rogue stormtrooper that the Force had awakened in because he felt guilty about what he was doing. And Poe Dameron says, why are you doing this? He said, because it was the right thing to do. After he was staring at, you know, his squadron shooting all these civilians in a desert in the middle of the night. You know, I get goosebumps talking about it because, like, that's compelling to me. That's the Force awakening. You know, that's the redemptive change that's going on in this Imperial splinter group that's trying to keep the evil going. That's the awakening. I think they could have used side plot. The sequel trilogies would have been absolute garbage if it hadn't been for the quality actors. Full stop.
Yeah.
If it would have been awful because the plot is all over the place. They rewrote it 20 times. It's obvious. If it wasn't for Daisy Ridley and the actor that plays Finn and Poe Dameron, all of them are great, wonderful. And then all the old actors coming back helped. But they carried it, especially Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver. In my opinion, they carried the movie. In my opinion, their chemistry on screen. The reason I have it so low on my list is because it is so much of a carbon copy of A New Hope. I understand why they did that they're trying to get everybody in the theater. They're trying to get the old man. They're trying to get my dad. They're trying to get y'all's dad. And they're trying to get me. And they're trying to get potentially my kid in there. Everyone can relate to the plot. It's familiar. Jonathan, you said it was safe. That's exactly it. A different Death Star that's bigger and worse, a new Empire, you know, a Vader wannabe with a mask in a row, you know. So that really, you know, there's 100 different things they could have done with the plot. That's why I have it low, because even though I was watching the movie, enjoying it, but going, I have seen this before, and it's hard for me to ignore it. But then again, like I said, it's hard to rate the movie without the other two because I feel like the
other two bring it down.
I feel like the other a little bit. I think if for some reason Star Wars could never been made again, and this movie was left alone, there would have been some cliffhangers, obviously, but I think it would have been great and it would have aged really well. This movie ages strangely. It ages strangely with the other two movies. Things that I really like, the humor. Humor's always been in Star Wars, but this was a little bit more of like kind of modern media.
More Marvel-y humor. Yeah.
Marvel-y humor, which I wasn't crazy about, but it was very well done in this movie. You know, like the stormtroopers walking by and Kylo Ren's throwing a fit and they just kind of turn around. Hilarious. Han Solo walking by BB-8 saying "move, ball." Cracking me up in the theater because I was just like, you know, and you know, just little great moments, but missed opportunities is the name of my doctoral thesis for the sequel trilogy, and that's what I feel like was the case here. Side note, the fact they used Ilum in the Fallen Order to be a Starkiller base, I think is really cool because the planet's basically one giant kyber crystal at its core. So the fact they used that from the Death Star, I think is great because if you leave the planet in the game, you can see the equatorial digging that's going on around it. And I was like, I know what that is. So really cool thing they think they did. What else? I think the beginning's really good. The first few minutes of the movie is good, but one of the things that bothered me in the movie as I was sitting there is the pacing is really fast. I mean, it's like, we're like, boom, on that planet, people are getting killed. Boom, Finn's up there getting chewed out by a superior officer. Boom, we're back to officers. Boom, Finn's getting busted.
It's not as breakneck as The Rise of Skywalker, because Rise of Skywalker is a ridiculously fast-paced movie.
This one's faster. This one's like a bullet
But-
train. Rise of Skywalker's fast. I'll give you that. But
I was gonna say, Rise of Skywalker, so somehow the Emperor's back.
that's true.
Yeah.
The narrative is, but I just feel like, I mean, I was watching it literally because I was so hyped. I mean, I was like, God, it's so fast, you know. But the chemistry between the actual characters, Finn and Poe, was great. It was a good movie overall, but it was hard for me to ignore some of the obvious things that everybody's talked about.
I will end it with this very briefly and say this entire trilogy, since this is the last one we'll talk about, we've already talked about the first two. This entire trilogy, because of the lack of narrative direction going in, and it's clear there was a lack of direction. This trilogy feels like a caricature of Star Wars,
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, if I was a 5-year-old kid playing Star Wars in my sandbox, like I would throw the characters out there and they would just kind of do stuff. And that's basically what this trilogy is, and it doesn't really accomplish anything that we didn't already know. And I think like that's like the best possible way I can describe it, because there's just no narrative focus at all. And like they even said, we just let the directors come in, do what they want to do, and then pass it off to the next director. And I'm like, that's a bad
Can't do
idea.
that.
It's like
Can't
it's a
do
bad
that.
idea. So I think that's ultimately why it ends up where it is. But anyway, we'll jump into 17, and that is going to be the original animated Clone Wars show. And some of you may not have even seen this.
It's old.
It actually came out in 2003, so 5 years before the Star Wars: The Clone Wars on Cartoon Network. And it was a sort of like a companion piece to Attack of the Clones. They wanted something to, I think it was George Lucas's kind of original idea to flesh out that period between the end of Attack of the Clones and the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. Obviously, it was much better done. George Lucas obviously went back 5 years later and said, we got to do this better now that we've got all this animated technology. And obviously had a really up-and-coming and talented showrunner in Dave Filoni to help with that. And but this is kind of old animation style. It's kind of some short stories that kind of does some, you kind of get some looks at early looks at Ventress and Grievous and I don't know. It's more of like the classic cartoon where you can kind of turn your brain off and just watch it, because it's not very narrative driven. It's more just like kind of fun and lighthearted. But I enjoy this show for what it is. It's pretty short. I mean, I think you can get through the entire thing in like an hour, maybe. I don't know. It's not very long, but I think they did it in 2 parts. This is the picture we have up here is actually just part 1. But these are fun, and I enjoyed going back and kind of watching the animation style and kind of appreciating that. So
I can go first on this one. I think it's fantastic. To me, it provides a better origin story than we get for some, like for Asajj Ventress. That may be my favorite part of that. And then the Mon Cal versus Quarren arc is 10 times better in this one than it is in the newer, or the TV show. Kit Fisto, love him a lot more in this one than I did then. And then General Grievous earned the reputation as a fierce Jedi killer in this one, instead of the,
he's kind of a wimp in the movie. He's
pretty much a coward in the Clone Wars TV show. So the later TV show, to me anyway.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, he kind of is in the movie in general too. Like he always runs when things get kind of out of hand. So I do like his portrayal in this one. He's a lot more menacing in this one.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like I'm the one that's always like, come on, guys, this is fun. And you guys are like, no. But I feel like we're totally flipping now. I remember as a kid watching this and not liking it. I don't know. And I remember as a kid thinking it wasn't serious enough. I took Star Wars so seriously as a kid, I still do. So, I don't know. I just didn't like it. I watched it again a couple years ago and I enjoyed it better. It feels out of place a little bit. The storytelling doesn't, but the visuals, like if you close your eyes, it kind of feels better, but it visually is so different than the kind of baseline that we have with the Clone Wars animation that's being used over and over and over again with the name Clone Wars. It does feel kind of a little bit of, it's just different, but it's still fun, but I remember as a kid, I didn't like it. And that's all I can really say about it.
I was 13 and angry at the world, so I didn't watch it.
So I think I ranked it so low because I actually don't really necessarily remember a whole lot from it. So I probably should have mentioned that, I guess, to you. Just kind of, that's the reason why I ranked it so low. Yeah, it's been so long. I mean, I watched it when I was like 10, probably 12 or something like that. So, and I haven't watched it since. So I kind of just ranked it low because, I mean, I couldn't remember a whole lot from it. So I'm just going to leave it at that, honestly.
Well, you may not can see behind me. I actually have. I took it down. I had it up there, but I have the part 1 on DVD, and so I actually rewatched it relatively recently, and was reminded. I just love. I'm sort of a film nerd in a sense of like I don't know everything there is to know about film, but I love just to really analyze the style of filmmaking, the style of animation, and so I can really dislike a story or a movie and still appreciate the way in which they made it, they filmed
The composition.
the style. It's like we talked about in our Transformers retrospective. It's like I'm not a big Michael Bay fan. I'm not a big fan of the Transformers movies, but I appreciate some of the things that he did visually in those movies and things like that. So like that's just an example, but that's like that's what I love. Like this like old style cartoons that I, might have grown up watching. I used to watch Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger, and I think this had like almost the exact same animation style, and it just reminds me of my childhood and some of the shows I watched, and also like to me the voice actors in the 2008 one are much better than in this one. I think they sound more like they are similar to the actors in the actual movies, whereas this one they feel out of place. But that's just kind of a minor thing. But yeah, this it's kind of fun. But I think obviously it's not for everybody. So yeah, let's jump over to 16, and that's going to be Solo. I have many thoughts, but I don't know that I should go first on this one because I don't know. This is one that the best way I can describe it to somebody is I didn't need this movie. I love the character of Han Solo. I'm not of the mindset that like no one except Harrison Ford should ever play this character. But the biggest issue I took with this movie, it's kind of a fun movie if you disregard the Han Solo backstory stuff. It's kind of just a fun movie that's with great actors and some fun sequences. But the biggest issue I had with this film was it gives us answers to Han Solo's backstory that we didn't need and we didn't want, and also that were just really either dumb or underwhelming to the point where I just kind of tell myself, I just wish I hadn't seen that. Because it sort of takes away from the character, the mystique of the character a little bit, and really gives it a really underwhelming sort of reveal to a character that like we don't want to really know why he is the way he is. We just like him how he is, and so that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like I said, it's kind of fun, good actors, good performances, fun action, looks good visually, but I'm just it's better than some and worse than others. So it falls somewhere in the middle for me.
I don't necessarily hate this movie. I mean, I obviously rank it 17, so it's not like on my worst of the list. But I don't know. I don't think it was terrible. I mean, the plot was I thought was decent. I thought it was kind of cool to see a backstory of Han Solo personally. Do we necessarily needed it? No, I guess not. But I think it was still cool to see a little bit more of the younger Han Solo and his adventures that he went on. Also, I think Donald Glover playing Lando was really cool. I really liked Donald
He's
Glover.
really good. Yeah.
I do
Yeah,
too.
he did a
That
really
was
good job.
Really good.
Yeah, he did a really good job playing Lando, and I thought I remember seeing something about him possibly playing Lando again in an upcoming Star Wars project. Which would be
It's been like shelved and then unshelved and then shelved, but I think it's possibly still coming. I don't think anybody
Yeah.
really knows the answer to that question.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either, but I think there's a chance that it could happen, which I would be down for. And I don't know, I think it was kind of cool that they did kind of like almost like a heist plot in a way. It was like him doing like a whole heist and stuff. I thought that was kind of cool. That was interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything really, I would say, terrible to say about it. I think it was all around just a good watch. And honestly, I'd probably watch it again. So
Yeah, I think I liked this one more than I thought I would because kind of sandwiched in with the prequel or with the sequels. So I think that's kind of why mine's a little higher. You know, I think there's a lot of references to the extended universe, which makes it seem like it's bigger. This is one of the ones where, you know, they kind of world build a little bit. They gave some pretty good fan service to some old Star Wars stories. I'm not the biggest. I'm with John. I'm not the biggest fan of how they did his, Han's backstory, but
I'm still like completely against how they give him his last name. I'm like, that is not. If you've read any, and I know the EU is not technically canon, but if you've read any EU stuff, he's like from a long line of people with the name Solo, and it's a whole.
Yeah.
It's like when the way they do in the movie, I rolled my eyes so hardcore in that scene. I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those in the middle movies for me. I know I've got it higher than everybody else, but really, anything from probably 13 to 20, 21 or so. It's like that in between. You could kind of just depends on whatever mood you're in that day. Flip them all around.
Yep.
The biggest thing for me is it's a great movie if you took out the fact that it was about Han Solo. Because in general, it's a good movie. But they're like, oh, it's young Solo. Well, we saw young Solo in the original trilogy. He was a young guy. I mean, he wasn't as young as Luke, but he was still a young guy. And the actor who plays him in this movie is roughly about the same age as Harrison Ford was in those movies. So taking him out, it's a great movie. I also remember when they were shooting this movie, the original edit, they didn't like and said it was too silly. So they reshot a bunch of stuff, re-edited it, recut it.
Too.
That changed directors too, and completely changed it up. And I was like, this is the non-silly version. I remember at the time I was really into listening to Kevin Smith and Mark Medardin's podcast, Fat Man on Batman, which is now Fat Man Beyond. But and they spoke a lot about this. I was like, that's a good point. This is a very silly Star Wars movie, which mean, yes, we have the holiday episodes and some of the cartoons. But I think
it's the sillier one.
It was maybe a little too silly for me, which is I can't believe it. For the first time, I have something ranked lower than everybody else.
Maybe the only time that happens. Yeah.
I think it might be. But yeah,
well, I think something that people forget too about this is the original directors for this were Lord and Miller, who went on to do Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse. And a lot of people were like, we kind of would have liked to have seen their version of this movie. And I tend to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much fallout. This movie came right after The Last Jedi.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail your discussion.
Sorry. This was my biggest thing, is they made such a stink about his dice just so in The Last Jedi they could put those dice in Leia's hands. It was almost felt like they made the movie simply so they could do that.
You do see the dice.
The dice
in A New
was
Hope.
a big stink.
You see it. You see the dice in the original trilogy, but you have to really look hard.
But they made just a
And how
big
many
stink
of us
about it.
actually cared about the dice when we watched
Nobody.
the original
Thank
trilogy?
you.
Nobody.
Sorry, that was my last
Nobody.
point.
No one cared about the dice. This movie came right after The Last Jedi, and I remember on Reddit specifically, there was such a dour, depressed tone. Everyone's like, "You ready to see this movie?" No, everyone was so scared to go see it because The Last Jedi, and I know you guys can confess this, The Last Jedi hurt you, so you can just say that's why you rank everything so bad. That's new. Look, you're all nodding. The Last Jedi hurt you, and it's okay, and you don't trust Disney. I don't blame you. But Solo is kind of a personification of that. People were so hurt by The Last Jedi, and myself included. I'm kind of a simp for Star Wars, so I'm gonna go see pretty much everything. But I do remember, even myself, I was like, I walk in the theater going, let's see how this one goes, and being scared a little bit. I don't know why I haven't ranked at 19. Sometimes it's really hard to rank some of these. It's not like some of these rankings that I have are like I want to put like in bold because it's like, yes, this is number 4. Some of them it's kind of like I had to put it somewhere.
Like it and Force Awakens could have flip-flopped.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on my mood that day. I liked the movie. The movie's very fun. Financially, Disney, Marvel, that whole conglomerate, just Disney. They want origin stories for everyone, and it's not needed. We can do, if there would do a solo story, a few months before New Hope happens. That kind of like Rogue One. You don't have to necessarily like shoehorn it right into New Hope, but you can kind of imply it. Not everybody needs an origin story as to why they're in this universe. I think the movie's still interesting with who, he comes from Corellia. You can see Star Destroyers being built in the background. He's basically a homeless kid running around with Daenerys Stormborn from Game of Thrones, which was so derailing. I love the actress. I like her a lot. She's pretty, but then she's on screen. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. What are we watching here? What are we watching here? Aren't you supposed to be on dragons? So it was derailing for me. It's just like kind of like seeing Mary from Lord of the Rings in the Rise of Skywalker, who's like somehow Sith cloning, and I'm like, whoa, hold on, Mary, whoa. So it was just anyway. So anytime
pipe somewhere, yeah,
right. It was just really weird sometimes seeing big universe people in other universes. I don't care for it. But anyway, the only person that gets a pass was a dude that played Apollo Creed. But he was also in Mando. That guy gets a pass because I just love him. He's awesome. Solo was fun. The heist thing was good. I think there was a lot of original ideas. It just didn't need to be done with Han Solo as a character. Megan nailed it perfectly. He's a young kid already. We don't need his life story like his Genesis chapter 1. He was running around in Corellia. That's his start. They can allude to it, but they could have done like a Rogue One thing where it was like, this is what he was up to before he actually kind of landed on Tatooine and ran into Obi-Wan and Luke. That's what they should have done. The movie's still good. I like it. It had some great moments. Glover nailed, absolutely nailed, grand slam out of the park. Lando's character, he's more like Billy D. Williams and Billy D. Williams at times. I like the world building aspect of it. There was a deleted scene that if they had left in the movie, I think would have made it better. It was him getting kicked out of the Imperial Navy for being he was wanting to be a pilot for TIE fighter pilot, and he got kicked out for, I think he was hot riding something, and they're like, this is unbecoming of a TIE fighter, and they kicked him out, and that's why he joined the Imperial Army. But they used that scene where he basically falls in the mud, and you see AT-STs getting dropped behind them, and there's explosions and smoke, and they're essentially just taking out some indigenous rebellious population. It definitely it stung. I remember watching it and going like, whoa, because he in the extended universe, he always alluded to he was Imperial at some point. I'm foggy in my expanding universe, but I think he was in the Navy as a pilot. That's why he's such as he's a good pilot. But they took that scene out of the movie, and that would have been a great callback to an expanded universe thing that they should have left in. But I do, and then that scene was going to go to him falling in the mud in the mud as a mud trooper support in the regular Imperial Army that wasn't the stormtroopers. That's what they were trying to say. I think that was cool to see. I think it was cool to see that there was some dissonance in the Imperial ranks. They're like, why are we here? Oppressing these people, and the Imperial officers are kind of like, you will do what you are told. So that was I like that part of it. The Red Sun, Black Sun, Crimson Dawn. That's the word. Black Sun is the other one. You knew what I meant. Interesting.
Kind of shoehorned in.
I don't know why. It was cool seeing Darth Maul at the end. Was not needed.
Yeah,
it was not needed.
Servicey to the max on that one.
Too much, and I'm all about fan service. It was a good movie. It's a good movie. It was fun. Seeing Chewbacca was, I think the whole Chewbacca, how him and Chewbacca met actually was really cool. Him helping him like get out of there, but that was already kind of established in the EU. But as EU people, we have to accept the retconning, and it stings and it hurts. But I like the movie though,
especially when a lot of the EU stuff was done better. I think that's
better, much better. Some things were done different that I was okay with from they took from the EU. There was some cool moments. When they flew into the mall with the Star Destroyer, that was cool. But the mall,
how they made the Kessel Run like a joke, though, that was
I didn't like that. There's some retconning I'm okay with, because sometimes things don't age well from movies made 40, 50 years ago, and you kind of have, you just sometimes it's okay, but some things just need to be left alone. I didn't care for the really you're not gonna like the really like hyper feminist droid that was like River Evolution, and the droid
that was the most Disney part of that I've
Thank you. Seen. It was just I don't know. It was just I remember watching. I'm like, what is this? This droid got like blue hair. Back
not just that, but her and Lando, they hint that they got some kind of thing going, and I'm like,
yeah, man, like what? No. It was weird. What I will say this. People hated on Solo. I actually liked it. I really did, but people hated on it so much. And I think it got a negative rep. People went in wanting to hate it and left hating it, regardless of what was going to be on that screen, because of The Last Jedi and the time period it came out in. And that's unfortunate.
It is. And I'll just, we're going to wrap it up tonight. But I just want to end with this. I think just a couple of short points, but I think that that sort of, for one, this was the only Star Wars movie that's ever lost money. They did not gain back what. Yeah. So their budget, they had to reshoot this because they changed directors. They went from Lord and Miller to Ron Howard, and they had to reshoot a bunch of crap. They had to do a bunch of. I mean, this movie was expensive. I mean, it cost. Wow. I want to say that it was like $300-400 something million to make, and the movie only made like, I want to say made $300 or $400 million. And they needed, that's just including your production budget. That's not your marketing. That's not, all these other things. And so you can almost double that, and they need to make closer to like $800 or $900 million to even make a profit. And so they'll see that meme that's like Solo lost money, and that's because it literally did. And so there's that.
The directors getting changed a lot. Was that fallout from The Last Jedi? Because I feel like I remember reading there was panic amongst the corporate Disney, and they were
the best. The best information I ever got on that was essentially they gave their, because she did this with Rogue One as well, where Kathleen Kennedy fired Gareth Edwards, brought in Tony Gilroy. At this point, she's done it on a lot of those projects, but I think essentially what happened was they gave their sort of initial pitch. They actually filmed a good bit of it, and then they were like y'all said earlier, this, whether that's too goofy, too silly, they didn't like the direction, so they called it creative differences, but basically she kicked them out and brought Ron Howard in. And Ron Howard's a great filmmaker, we know that, but he also was working with a hodgepodge of different things. But just kind of wrap things up, my final point was that we talked that the point was made earlier about making an origin story for a character we didn't need an origin story for, and that maybe that could have been used in different ways. And I think the biggest issue that Disney maybe has not picked up on since acquiring Lucasfilm is like we have a lot of characters in the Star Wars universe that probably need backstories told. I mean, we talked about Count Dooku in Tales of the Jedi earlier. That would have been a great solo spin-off origin movie to have a young Count Dooku and sort of tell his path to the dark side and all these things. And like, do a, off the top of my head, there's so many other Jedi like Mace Windu who like, nothing about them post or pre prequels. And so like, there's so many different characters like that like Han Solo, we know his story arc. He goes from selfish smuggler to, sort of heart of gold.
Yeah.
He's part of the rebellion. He's all in, and then so we didn't need we already know that story arc, and so I think that's maybe the biggest issue with projects like this is that there's so many other better stories that could have been told with characters that needed it more than this character did, and also we just didn't need answers given that were just kind of sucky in the end. And I think that's, it's better to not tell the story at all than to tell it really poorly. And I think
they do that for money, though. It's to get more people in the theater. Like if it's like IG-88, a story, no one's going to come to that. We might. We're going to like fan out over it, but
nobody needs to pitch enthusiasm to the Star Wars fan base. Like,
right. But they want the whole family to go. They want Disney's going to want the whole family to go, but. And I get that from a business standpoint, but from us nerd standpoint, it's not always the best decision. Oh, well, we got to deal with it, though.
Yep.
Well, I think that's all we're going to have time for tonight. Megan, Andrew, thank you all for joining us again. We will, hopefully in a shorter duration of time.
We can stay. Actually, we can stay longer anytime because our baby's sleeping great these days. So we're not really needing to rush off.
Don't say that. He'll never sleep again.
Whoops.
Knock on wood.
Whoops.
We, due to some of our schedules,
that's fine.
We'll have to end it tonight. But yeah, in the future, we will hope maybe we can push through the last 15 or so in our next recording. We'll have to see. But hey, thank y'all for coming. We really enjoyed the discussion. This is a franchise we're all passionate about, and I think that's whether that's been dulled over time or not, it's still really fun to discuss these, and this is why we have this channel to do stuff like this. So thank y'all for coming. As usual, Ethan, Drew, appreciate it. And for those listening, if you want to support us, please subscribe, like, comment, let us know where you would rank these videos, and just let's get a good discussion going on where we have them and where you would have them. And other than that, I think we're gonna call it a night. So we thank y'all for watching. We'll see y'all next time.